right, so hello and welcome everyone to Representation in Cinema. We talk about the movies and representation of Black people, Indigenous people, and people of color in them. This podcast is hosted by Our Voices Project. Our goal is to dismantle destructive stereotypes of minority groups perpetuated in the media by producing films centered on the multifaceted experiences of Black people, Indigenous people, and people of color, and by providing educational resources across marginalized groups brought on by the stories we share. Our Voices Project is also a committed community partner, providing opportunities to affirm racial and cultural identities, empowering students as agents of social change, and contributes to an individual's learning through cultivation of critical thinking. I'm Jackie McGriff, the director and producer for Our Voices Project, and joining me in our discussion is the newest member of the Our Voices Project team, Annalisa Rogers. Welcome, Annalisa. All right, and then we are also being joined by Vashti Anderson, the assistant professor at the School of Film and Animation, College of Art and Design at RIT. Welcome, Vashti. All right, and Vashti Anderson is a Trinidadian American filmmaker and published author. She has been working in film and TV production in New York City since the late 1990s. Since earning her MFA in film at NYU, her films have won grants and awards and screened in film festivals all over the world. Her latest feature film, Moko Jambi, explores themes of race, class, and post-colonialism through a fictional story set in rural Trinidad and is currently streaming on Amazon and other platforms. Okay, so let's get started. Fast Color is a science fiction drama released back in 2018, starring Gugu Mbatha-Raw, who you may have seen in films like Belle and Concussion, or in the Marvel TV series Loki. The film is directed by Julia Hart. After her special abilities are discovered, Ruth is on the run and has no choice but to go back to her childhood home, where she reunites with her mother and her daughter, and in that time begins to mend the relationships that have long been so broken. So if you haven't watched the film already, you can watch on Netflix now and then come back to listen or watch our podcast on our YouTube channel. From here on out, though, we'll be discussing the film in depth, so spoilers ahead, you have been warned. All right, so Annalisa, I'm going to throw it to you first. What was one thing that you enjoyed most from this film?
I think it was the legacy. You had 3 generations of women talking about their struggles and the relationship that they had. It was really interesting to watch their dynamic and watch them grow together. So that was something that really stuck out to me.
Awesome. Vashti?
It was 2 things. It was the sort of terror of the scarcity of water situation, the environmental situation that the story is set in. And it's the reveal, and this spoiler, it's the reveal of the fast color, which was an amazing moment. And it's a character who is so tortured and goes through so much that moment is such a sort of earned and lovely moment of release for her. I thought it was a really impactful moment in the film and the most visually memorable to me.
I love that it's so, again, it's going back to what Annalisa was saying, it's about being generational. And you also, I think what I found like amazing about it is that it's also a very different sort of like special ability. It's not like, I love the kinds of films. I mean, I'm a comic book nerd through and through, but I also love the films that really, the power itself is not subtle, but like the tone of the film is really subtle, and it's really not centering so much, even though yes, that is like part of the plot and it's definitely a device used in the film, but it's not necessarily centered on the ability itself. It's really telling a story of a woman who has been trying to really come into her own, who's really just trying to, get past, struggles that she's been through throughout her life. And also trying to reconnect with her daughter as well as her mom. So I found that very endearing. And then of course, like she just happens to be like someone who has like these really intense powers, and really they all do. And they kind of speak, each superpower also too kind of speaks to that individual. So I thought that was refreshing. Okay, so at the beginning of the film, Belle finishes her narration with the phrase, "What is broken always stays broken." So, Vashti, I'm going to turn it to you first. As a filmmaker, in what ways do you feel this sets the tone, or does it not?
I think it sets up different thematic threads. It sets up several thematic threads. One about trauma and how there's something that remains broken once you have a trauma, even if you heal, it's still there. Family, a broken family. And I love how this family is broken in a way that it's based kind of on their individuality and their strength, that's why it's broken.
Right.
And that they don't get along, but in this very interesting way. And societal bonds, that there's this sense of isolation in the world that we're in, which we as human beings, generally speaking, sort of crave is those bonds. The environment being broken and unable to be, and staying broken until, and then this is the other thing, that it kind of sets up is an elaboration on that statement. And the elaboration being that everything stays broken until it's fixed in a new way, right? Until there's a new way, there is a new approach that we have to discover through this character or through these characters within ourselves, find a way to connect to a different part of ourselves that can maybe get us closer to fixing something, in the end, it's like there's this new day coming.
Yeah.
So I think it sets it up very well, because it sets up the things that are sort of tangible immediately within the story, but it also sets up the ending. It sets up this solution, as it were, that there's an elaboration on this statement.
Yes. Yeah. I love what you said about how it's, something stays broken until it's fixed in a new way. And I can't help to think back to the daughter she's working on the engine to the truck, that used to belong to her mother. Her mother comes back and there's a bowl that she used to, use as a kid, and it was broken. And when she comes back, her daughter, she finds that it's fixed and it's been mended because, and they show this in the film, the daughter learned how to piece something back together, which wasn't previously something that her mom felt that could be done. This is Ruth in the movie. And I just found that powerful, because here's the mom. She has this incredible power. She can't exactly harness it. It almost seems just too much for her. And here's her daughter, who is finding, like you said, new ways to fix things, something that her mom just never thought possible. And I love that, because it's not only talking about the superpower, it's talking about mother and daughter relationships, right? Moms, they're trying to do the very best, of course, for their kids. And so something that they may have struggled with, or, never could possibly get past, here are their kids, here's your kid finding a new way to kind of get through that, or fix the problem, or find another remedy that wasn't previously thought to have been possible. So I think, yeah, as far as when she says stays broken, I had to think about that for a few days. After I'd watched the movie the first time, what stays broken is or what is broken stays broken. I'm what is she talking? And then I had to keep thinking through it. But it really, I think, provides a really nice thread, for the rest of the film, because it's constantly something that's also being brought, and you keep seeing that reoccurring thing, which I just think Julia Hart does an amazing job with. There will be some movies, there'll be something introduced, and then you're okay, but where is that reoccurring thing? Where is that theme, throughout the movie? Why was it introduced? But I think this does it well. So it's just, there's so many different layers layers to this.
Just to add one more thing, the method of fixing something in this story is it may be not within the bounds of something we already know. Like it goes into physics, right?
Yes.
So it's like, it could be like an entirely new discovery. It could be something that doesn't conform to the rules of the world as we see them in the moment. That was a really interesting part of the film as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Annalisa, any thoughts to that? Oh, you're on mute.
So I think the thing that came back to me when we started talking about this part, once broken, you stay broken, is the whole idea of birth, rebirth, and renewal. We come into this thing thinking that we're one thing, which is what, I think it was Ruth. Ruth thought, she was broken. She couldn't do this thing. She couldn't see these colors, and she wasn't able to.
Got some dogs. Oh man.
So sorry. Always.
No worries.
Right then and there. So get out. So, it's talking about that relationship and looking at the relationship, and even to the point where, when Ruth actually just comes back and, she's starting to experience, an issue where, she's, getting tied down because she's causing the quakes, and her mom's looking at her wrists and the binding. And it's like, you see that old relationship, but then Ruth is like, oh no, we're going to do something. I don't want to do this. You don't need to do this. I can do it myself. And it's like, in a way, she was like kind of pushing herself forward to and illustrate that she has grown in some way, shape, or form, it was just like really interesting, because you see that theme also throughout where Ruth is like thinking that she's only one thing, or that she can only do one thing. And then towards the end, she's like, oh, wow. And that was her instance of rebirth and renewal. But it was also for Belle, who's the grandmother, and then also the daughter, who started to look at her mother in a whole totally different light.
Yeah, absolutely. No, those are fantastic points. I love what you said about again about rebirth and renewal, and then also talking about like what the binds, like what's binding her, and how that's like representing the old relationship. Like, she's trying so hard to like depend on just herself, but in a way, and I feel like what I took from that is like, how I feel is like she's still like holding on to old things, and it just, you need to, no, there needs to be a new way to adapt. Like what's been working, what you have been doing hasn't been working. And so I'm just finding new ways, to rebuild those relationships and mend those relationships. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about so oftentimes what I'll see, especially when it's it's someone from a minority group or historically marginalized group, and I often see stereotypes. So with each of these ladies having abilities, so these are Black women, each with special abilities and everything. We have seen this in other films, but it's always used as a way to serve their white counterpart, so to speak. So if you have something like The Legend of Bagger Vance, or you have The Green Mile, it's usually done in service of again, of like their white counterparts. And so this stereotype is called, or what we would call the magical Negro. And what Fast Color does, at least I feel, and you guys can speak to this, but I feel that Fast Color actually flips this narrative, because it's essentially about them, and so I wanted to know if you felt that Fast Color, first of all, if you agree that Fast Color is, a good example of, flipping that archetype, or that stereotype, and if not, share your thoughts. Let's see, I can turn it back to you, Annalisa, and get your thoughts, and then Vashti, I'll get yours as well.
Well, actually, it's really interesting, because in some way, shape, or form, it did and it didn't. It was like really subtle. Like when they were talking about powers, and how they exhibited those powers. It was like those powers was really like a disease. And then it was like, well, maybe it's not a disease, maybe it's a commodity of some sort. So you have all these white people now chasing down both Bo, Ruth, and Lila to kind of understand what their powers were. And so it's like, here they are as a commodity and commodity. And immediately I went back to things like Tuskegee Airmen, or, you know, even more recently, things like with what's happened with the COVID virus, you know, and people being a little bit leery and, you know, feeling like they had to be on the run because, you know, they were always being chased by these things, you know. So it's like, yeah, but in the way she addressed it too.
Yeah.
she addressed the issue as well.
Yeah. How do you feel about that, Vashti?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that you asked this question, because I was thinking about that when I was watching it. Because I do think about that idea. I think for my interpretation is that in this film is that it flips it because of point of view, because we're in, you know, usually with that archetype, it's not their point of view. This one, we are in their point of view. We are in the protagonist's point of view. And the protagonist is the person with the powers. And it's kind of three protagonists. But I feel like that's an important part of the way that the characters are represented in the story, is that it is their story and it's not the, like, let's say if the main character was like that white guy who's hunting her down, right? So that would be a shift in point of view. But because the point of view is in the realm of these characters who have the powers, I don't know. I think it sort of flips the idea, you know, it flips the archetype. It's also that the power, like the powers are not there to serve a white character or to serve their story or their epiphany about life or, you know, whatever. So that helps, you know, as well. But I was thinking about this. It's a very interesting take on characterization when you have like everybody else is white in the story, right? It's like, and then it's like this insular group of people who have this ability. Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting take.
Yeah, for sure. I'm often wary of this because, like, if they're not serving, someone, especially someone who's non-Black or is white, and if it's not that, they're immediately, you know, they're the first person to die, another trope that, you know, we often see in films and everything like that. And so the first time watching this, I was hoping, I was like, oh God, please don't let them all live. And then, like, you know, let them all just be free in, you know, with their abilities and stuff, which of course, like, you know, at the end, you know, the mom ends up like turning herself in, not turning herself, but turning herself over rather, you know, to the authorities to protect, you know, her daughter and her granddaughter. The reason why I thought that this was a bit of a flip, because again, it's not serving, like, their powers aren't serving anyone, you know, but, you know, themselves. And even so, given what Ruth is going through, it's not necessarily serving her until, of course, like, she's able to control it. But like with this podcast, and when I'm just talking about films in general, I'm always just like looking at, okay, is this whose point of view, whose story is it? Of course, as all filmmakers do, we all film enthusiasts, you know, do, is like, okay, who is the main protagonist, who's the main character, you know, whose story are we telling here? And so I think, just as far as, like, again, who the powers, or their powers rather, are serving, I think it does do a great job. But then yes, I can also see the argument as to, yeah, but like they're also still being chased by these people who kind of want to use their abilities, like you were saying, Annalisa, as, like, you know, something for them. So is it really flipping? I don't know. Yeah, so if you're currently listening to the podcast, please let us know. We would like to know, like, your comments as well, if you think it flips that stereotype or not. Okay, so let's get even a little bit deeper here. So in this film, I think you also mentioned this, Vashti, that the water is scarce in this world. And then this plays a small role in seeing, what Ruth's powers can do. However, so let's just, like I said, get even deeper here. However, let's say that she didn't have any of her abilities. Like, what if the focus was about Ruth finally facing her fears without them? Do you think that the film would have still worked? So like, take out the powers and leave everything else the same. Annalisa, I'll start with you. Or not Annalisa, I'm sorry, Vashti, I'll start with you since Annalisa started the last time.
I think it would have worked because the characters are so well developed, and that they have agency and they have an interesting story on their own. In terms of what Annalisa was talking about earlier, in terms of generational, the idea of like 3 generations of women who are kind of like the grandmother is looking forward. And I was thinking about like parenthood and the idea of parent, anybody can be a parent, and it's like this feeling, it humbles you, like humbles you big time. And you kind of look forward, you say like, I can do so much, or this is what I'm trying to do, but you're looking forward, you're looking to see what is coming next. And you're trying to help the generations to come have a world, or have a place in the world. And I think that is very powerful in this story. And, it's also, I rewatched Mother the other day by Darren Aronofsky, very controversial film, but I don't know if you guys have seen it.
It's on my list. People keep telling me I need to watch, and I do need to sit down and watch this.
It's very intense. It's but I did, I saw it when I was pregnant with my second child, which is, if you've seen the film, that's a very strange film to watch when you're pregnant.
I've seen the trailer at least, so I'm at least like, oh man.
Yeah. But I was thinking about the characters in that film are symbols, and the story works on a symbolic level. They're symbols in that film to a degree that I think doesn't work in most films, but it works in that film. For Fast Color, the characters could work on a symbolic level as well. So they're symbols for existing conflict in the world, racism, exoticism, all of these issues are there. They're present, and they're swimming around the story, regardless of whether there are superpowers involved or not.
Yeah. No, these are all great points. That's amazing. Thank you for that, Vashti. Annalisa, your thoughts?
I agree. This absolutely could have been a story on its own, even if it didn't talk about the powers. And again, I'm looking back and thinking about the generations of the women, and everything that each one of those persons brought to it, the strength that each individual character had, thinking about, the growth and how, each one in their own way, shape, or form influenced the other, and what those influences end up being. So, this could have absolutely been its own thing. But I think the strength, and I don't want to say novelty of it, of Black women having power, which, we can talk about that all day too,
For sure.
It was, yeah, it absolutely could have been. Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. The things that I enjoy most about a movie is like, even if it's so with anything having people with special abilities and everything like that, I'm always interested and like more moved by the movies that can do that, but then also talk about things like even if you were to take away the special abilities and everything, if you would still have that story, if you would still have those main themes, that the storytellers, the director, everyone working on the film is trying to say and trying to convey to their audience. So this, like I said before, this film I felt just had so many layers. And speaking of layers, so I think we have time for one more question. I'm going to take another quote by Belle, because she was full of quotes in this movie. And I was just like, oh my God, just another, like, it was like another quote. There's so many different levels you can take this next quote. She says, we're all just doing the same thing over and over again, hoping that someone will get it right. So for this context, this is in response to Ruth saying, talking about not wanting to mess it up. So I think, her daughter, so she's outside like fixing the truck as she usually does. And so they're having a conversation, Belle and Ruth, and Ruth is telling her, I don't want to mess this up. I don't want to mess this up. And this is what she says in response. Again, we're all just doing the same thing over and over again, hoping that someone will get it right. Now, when she's talking about that, I took this several different ways, and I just want to know your thoughts. Is it motherhood? Is it honing her abilities? Or do you think she's speaking to both? So that's the first question. And I lied, it's two more questions. Okay, and then also, did you see this repeated throughout the film? And if so, in what ways? So the first question, is it about motherhood? Is it about honing her abilities? Or do you think she's speaking to both? Vashti, I'll let you take this one first.
I think she's speaking to both. And am I only supposed to answer the first question, or can I go into the second?
No, you can go into the second one. Yeah. Do you think this is repeated throughout the film? And if so, what ways?
I do, and it's that it's Ruth tries to do this thing alone, and she doesn't get anywhere. And when she starts doing it with other people, when she starts doing the same thing with other people, she gets somewhere. Mm-hmm. And it's like we all need to contribute to the solution. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, I don't know, like you do a crossword puzzle, some of the answers, somebody else does it pass, they get farther. They do the same thing, but they get farther. And the next person does the same thing, but they get farther. And the working together is the way to do something, to do the same thing, but get farther, get somewhere.
For sure. Annalisa, your thoughts?
100% agree. And I think the point that really highlighted and illustrated that to me was when Belle pulled out the family history book, and she had histories and generations of women talking about what they were able to accomplish, what they had gotten done, and where somebody might have come up short, but somebody else later on down in the next generation was able to fix or do something different to improve upon what was already done. Right. So yeah, I absolutely think that it speaks to both.
Yes, absolutely. Again, and also too, just jumping back on what we were both saying, it's definitely both. But for that last point that you made, Annalisa, I can see that too with, parenting and everything. Now, I myself am not a parent, so I cannot speak at that aspect. But as someone, who has, a relationship with her mother, and like just being in different conversations with my mom on like what she was able to do, and then what my sister and I were able to accomplish, I think speaks to that same thing where, there are things that my mom never thought were possible. And here are my sister and I like, yeah, no, that's no problem. Like we can do that. Like this is a possible thing. We can do this. We can become entrepreneurs. We don't have to like, and I'm just giving one example, but like, we can be entrepreneurs. We can, we can build our own businesses and everything like that. We don't necessarily have to, work at a 9 to 5, all these different things again, like, and that's coming from a parent, my mom, who herself is an entrepreneur, but she's of course like coming from a different time. So like having conversations, with my mom, at least, like, again, I think also speaks to what future generations are able to accomplish, more so like than their the previous generations. And from what I've seen from my own mother, what I've seen from other parents, is like that's what you wish, right, for your kids, is that like they're able to do more, than what you were. Vashti, as a mom, like you can correct me if I'm wrong, because again, I'm only looking at this from the perspective of being someone's daughter, but not anyone's mother. So let me know if I'm like on point with that.
No, I think you are. But, I think the other part, now that I'm thinking about it and listening to you talk about it too a little bit more, is that whole sense of identity. It was like, this is what this person did. This is what this person did. And no one could take away what they contribute or their sense of identity about what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was pretty significant as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Both very, very great points. Thank y'all. Any final thoughts as we begin to wrap up? Vashti, I'll go with you or start with you.
Yeah, one thing that I kind of liked about this film overall is it's like kind of they mentioned X-ray specs. It's kind of like a punk rock version of a superhero movie, which I liked about it. It's like, yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to do it this way. And I think it was successful. Yeah.
So, Annalisa.
I think this was probably one of the best films I've probably seen within the last couple of years. And I really appreciated the characters. I appreciated the storyline. I appreciated the colors. There's nothing about this film that I didn't like. So it was really good. And I'm glad we have the opportunity to discuss it.
Absolutely. And let's see. I mean, again, like I absolutely adore this film. It's not talked about enough. Seeing like the color, her finally seeing the colors like towards the end was just everything. Like that is my favorite scene from the movie, is like her finally seeing the colors and then like having the colors linger. Like she's finally harnessed her power. She's finally in control. She's free from having to tie herself down, which is again like another very powerful message in the movie. So yeah, I would also say, Annalisa, that this is like for me, like one of the best films that had come out of that year. I think again it was like 2018, and I was like, we're not talking about this movie enough, which is why it's now on the podcast. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Vashti, for joining us for our talk for Fast Color.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me. This has been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you. We, again, so you can go watch Vashti's latest film, Moko Jambi. It's on Amazon Prime. Go check it out. And we're all about supporting filmmakers here. And she is an amazing filmmaker. So make sure you go watch it. It's on Amazon Prime, Moko Jambi. Look it up. Do it. Okay. And we appreciate her thoughts about film. All right. And thank you, Annalisa, for joining us for the first time on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. She will be joining us again in the future. So keep your eyes and ears on the lookout. Okay, and then to our viewers and listeners, thank you so much for your support of Our Voices Project and our Representation in Cinema podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and at www.ourvoicesproject.com for more information about what we do. You can sign up for our newsletter there, too, to be the first to get notifications about podcast episodes and new projects. We're going to be talking about the movies Passing and Moonlight in the coming months, so be on the lookout for those coming your way soon. You can listen to this podcast anywhere that you listen to your favorite podcasts, as well as view it on our YouTube channel. This has been Jackie McGriff and Annalisa Rogers of Our Voices Project. Thank you so much for listening and for watching.